Today, we're making a sweatshirt based on a free pattern. You can download the pattern on our website, the link is below. It's where you can also find all the details, the fabric requirements, the equipment and notions you'll need, the ease allowance, etc. Let's unpack the materials we're going to use making the sweatshirt. In the box set, I have the paper pattern, some ribbing, sweatshirt fleece fabric, and the matching thread to sew the garment. The sweatshirt fleece I've chosen for my project has a sheep's fleece look on the inside. A great advantage of this fabric is that it produces no pills. My advice is to choose similar fleece fabric, not necessarily sheep-like. To make sure your sweatshirt keeps the shape better, lightweight French terry and the like are not the best option. We won't need much ribbing for the project. Just a small piece for a nice neckline finish. The first thing to do before we cut the fabric is to shrink it out by steam pressing. To prevent shrinkage after washing the garment, the usual process is to fold the fabric wrong side out and steam press every section step by step. But this very special fluffy nap makes me want to hide it on the inside. Steam press every single area of your fabric. I'm now steaming the fold area that I've skipped. All along the piece of fabric. Shrink out the ribbing in the same way. Now let's cut the fabric. Start with the proper pattern layout. The front and back are cut on fold. It means you should fold a part of your fabric to lay the patterns. A section this wide will do for me. I don't need to fold the fabric in half. With a smaller size or volume of the sweatshirt, I might have placed the sleeve pattern on the other part of the fabric. But since it doesn't fit, I'll have to cut out the sleeve later. The one thing to bear in mind during the layout process: you should never be guided by the cut they made in the fabric store. It often happens to be uneven. Leave enough space on the edge when laying out the pattern, not to spoil a piece of your sweatshirt. Before pinning the front piece, make sure it's right next to the fold. Leave no space between the edge and the pattern. I'm going to secure the pattern with weights, and then start pinning. It's really convenient when the pattern doesn't move. How can you check on the pattern layout and the grain line? Measure the distance between the fold and the selvage with a ruler. And see if it's the same all along the garment length. After pinning the front and back, cut them out. My piece of fabric is not wide enough for the sleeve. When folded by half along the selvage. To cut out the sleeve, I'll fold the fabric in a different way. Instead of folding the sweatshirt fleece along the selvage, I'm folding it crosswise and placing the sleeve like this. Make sure the fabric is properly aligned along the grain. I've already checked it. I can move the sleeve closer to the edge. Now I'll secure the pattern piece with weights, pin and cut it out. The last piece to cut out is the neckband. Instead of the long edges, I'm going to align the pattern piece with the selvage. It's because they often make uneven cuts in a fabric store. Before unpinning the paper patterns from fabric, make the notches as marked on the pattern. The notches must be about 2 mm long. Don't cut too far. On the front and back pieces, make center notches. In addition to those marked on the pattern, make 2 mm cuts on the folded pieces. It will be way easier to finish the neckline with them. Now, we have one front piece cut on fold, one back piece cut on fold as well, 2 sleeve pieces, and a neckband piece of ribbing. First of all, we'll stitch the shoulder seams of the front and back. We don't apply interfacing to the shoulders because the fabric is not too stretchy. But if you wish, you can apply a straight grain interfacing strip. About 1 centimeter wide to the front shoulder edge. Pin the shoulder edges together at the beginning and end first. Then add some more pins in between. Now let's serge both shoulder seams on an overlocker. Before you start sewing, replace the needles in your overlocker with ballpoint needles designed for the knits, if you haven't done it before. Those may be jersey or super stretch needles, etc. They are different from the standard ones. Absolutely safe for the knit fabrics. They will leave no holes or snags in your garments. Bear in mind that the seam allowance is 1 centimeter wide, and the seam itself is a bit narrower. So, first of all, serge with the back piece on top, as the seam allowance will be pressed to the front. And secondly, cut the excess while serging. Don't forget to remove the pins. If you feel awkward sewing with the pins in and removing them while serging, baste the seams first. Press the seams flat as usual. Then press the seam allowances to the front. A tailor's board will be really helpful here. Don't forget to cool down and secure the seam allowances flat. Check up on a curl on the right side. If there is one, press again. You can leave the shoulder seams like this, or you can add a decorative line if you have a cover lock or cover stitch machine. I'll show how you can do it, but if you can't, it's absolutely fine. I'm going to use a cover stitch machine now. I've installed 3 needles to stitch this line. The presser foot has some ribs on it. Make sure the left-hand rib is beyond the seam while you're stitching. Stitch on the wrong side of the garment. Now put the needles down and up again. Take out the garment. On the right side, we have a beautiful decorative stitching line. Now, let's sew the sleeves into the arm size opened up flat. Don't mix up the left and right sleeves. There is a mark on the pattern and each of the sleeves has a notch at the front. I have the left sleeve here and I'm going to attach it to the garment right now. The sleeve has a notch at the top of the sleeve cap. Match it up with the shoulder seam and pin together. Always start pinning at the notches and then in between. At the front, match up the sleeve notch with the arm side notch as well. Align the edges and keep pinning. I'm going to serge both sleeves to the arm size opened up flat, one at a time on the overlocker. Turn the seam allowance to the garment rather than to the sleeve, and press on the right side. Don't move the iron too far, keep it next to the seam. I will now stitch a decorative line along the sleeve cap on a cover stitch machine. Whether you do it or not is up to you and the equipment you have. Press the decorative stitching line flat. Don't press too hard. Pin the sleeve and side edges into a single curved line. We'll serge them together end to end. Start with the notches as usual. Match up the ends of the sleeve cap seam so the seam is not interrupted. Pin this point. Now serge the side and sleeve edges together as a single curved line, end to end. Make sure the back piece is on top. Press the seam allowance to the front. I'm pressing on the right side of the garment. A tailor's board is really helpful. Without it, the sleeve may be difficult to approach. Now we'll finish the neckline with a neckband. The first thing to do is to join the short edges of the neckband. Pin them together. And stitch on a sewing machine at 1 centimeter from the edge. Like this. Press the seam allowances open. Now we have to attach the neckband to the sweatshirt's neck. I've chosen to show you a finishing method that is not often used and involves a cover stitch machine. If you don't have one, the overlocker will do. In that case, fold the neckband by half and attach it by serging. The finished neckband will be this wide. If you want to make it wider, cut a wider neckband piece. But I will show you a different method, which I think is really classy. Join the neckband and the garment right sides together. The seam may be centered at the back or aligned with the shoulder seam. It's up to you to decide. Match up the notches with the shoulder seams. We always start pinning with the notches. Then we'll stretch the ribbed neckband and add some more pins. It's very important to pin the neckband stretched. To finish the neck with an overlocker, fold the neckband by half. And serge both edges and the neckline together. Stretch the neckband piece, align the edges, and pin. It's going to look like this. Now we must join the pieces on an overlocker. We're approaching the point where we started at. I've already cut off a thread tail with small scissors. And I will keep serging for a while. With the knife still on. I'll switch it off a bit later. I'm disengaging the knife at this point and overlapping the seam by about 1.5 centimeters. Now I can raise the presser foot and just pull the garment out. No need to hide the thread tail at the end of the seam. We can skip it because the area will be covered. Just tie a knot and cut off the loose ends. We'll have this spot hidden anyway. For the next step, turn the sweatshirt right side out. Put a tailor's ham or a rolled towel inside. The seam allowance will move upward itself. Adjust it again. Make sure the seam allowance is turned towards the neckline facing. And press. Don't push the iron too far, keep it right next to the seam. Relocate the tailor's ham and press another section of the neckline. Again, make sure the seam allowance is looking upward. Keep going along the perimeter. Turn the garment to the wrong side again. And start folding the neckband down this way. This edge here will remain unfolded. The seam must be covered by the neckband by a couple of millimeters. Pin the folded neckband. Make sure the neckband is evenly wide all along. Notch out the seam allowance just a little to make it less bulky. Cut at an angle. Stop 1 mm short of the seam. Secure the neckband on the wrong side, with the edge next to the neckline. Baste it with hand stitches. Remember, we don't fold the edge. It remains open. Now we'll use a cover stitch machine to stitch a line along the neck, with the garment still wrong side out, as it is. But we'll work on the face of the neckline. Right here. When stitching on a cover stitch machine, make sure the left-hand rib on the presser foot is beyond the neckband. Hence, one edge of the stitching line will dive in between the garment pieces. Here's the result. We've overlapped the starting point to secure the stitching. So you can just cut off the loose ends at the start. But the thread tail at the end of the stitching line must be knotted and hidden on the wrong side. Pop the thread tail into a big eye needle and pierce the fabric right next to the knot. Take the thread to the wrong side of the garment. I have 2 more thread ends here and I'll hide them in the same way. Tie a knot on the wrong side and hide the thread tail in the seam. I've tied a double knot. Now I'm cutting the thread down to make it shorter. Popping the thread tail into the needle's eye. And pushing the needle eye into the seam to hide the thread. The last thing to do is to pull the thread out and cut the ends. Do the same with all of the thread tails. Press the neckband flat and it's done. Now we'll finish the bottom hem and sleeve bottoms of the sweatshirt. Serge the bottom edges right side up. Start near the side seam, but not on the side seam itself. As you're approaching the starting point, cut the loose thread ends. And disengage the knife of the overlocker. The easiest way to serge the sleeve bottom is to turn the garment wrong side out. But serge on the face of the sleeve. Press the serging line flat. Don't forget to hide the thread tails, as I've shown you before. Press both the bottom hem of the sweatshirt and sleeve bottoms. Now let's fold the bottom hem allowance to the wrong side. It is 2.5 centimeters wide according to the pattern. To make it easier, use a ruler and mark a line 5 centimeters above the edge. If you align the edge with the marked line, you'll have the seam allowance you need. Draw a line 5 centimeters above the edge all along the bottom hem and sleeve bottoms. Fold and pin the seam allowance before basting. Baste the seam allowances. We'll stitch the seam allowances of the bottom hem and sleeve bottoms on a cover stitch machine. The rib on the presser foot must be 1 to 2 millimeters off the edge of the seam allowance. With the sleeves, it will be easier to turn them right side out and stitch on the wrong side. Stitch the same way you did on the bottom hem. Remove the basting stitches. Press the bottom hem and sleeve bottoms flat. That's it. The sweatshirt is ready to be worn. I hope you've learned some new finishing methods, discovered some useful tips, and had a good time watching the video.